FFAW webinar series. We have Roseanne Leonard, who is the NL Managing Director of the Association of CBDCs.
Pretty close.
Pretty close, yeah.
My name is Roseanne Leonard. I don't get the pleasure of working with entrepreneurs on a day-to-day basis. I work for the 15 CBDCs that do. So what do I get to do is I get to talk about all of the amazing, innovative things that the CBDCs are doing on the ground in the community, helping every sector that they can grow and sustain itself. Because at the end of the day, the community, which is a part of our title, the Community Business Development Corporations, that's what's most integral to what it is that we do. So when it comes to the CBDCs, we offer, business financing support, advice, all that kind of stuff. So who is it that we help? Well, we help entrepreneurs. What does an entrepreneur look like? An entrepreneur can be anybody that's running a business. An entrepreneur, that could be anybody that's running a social enterprise, a co-op. It could be, managing a municipal enterprise. We're luckily able and creatively able to see entrepreneurs every direction that we look, and that's what's important. So the CBDCs themselves are tasked with governing and taking care of a pot of funds. Each CBDC in Newfoundland and Labrador has access to money that it can use to help invest and support small businesses and enterprises in their community. While they are governing the money, it is not necessarily their money. They want to make sure that it is used to the best ability to grow their communities. So we have a vested interest in making sure that the money that's being dispersed in the community is dispersed wisely, safely, and creatively, because we want to make sure that the funds that come back into the program can then help future entrepreneurs. So it's really important that we make good investments, make good judgment calls on those businesses. So when it comes to the CBDCs, we believe in the people and we care about the communities. So we look at loans in 3 particular criteria. So as an entrepreneur, do you have the ability and the skill set to manage that business? Are you capable of running it? Is the business viable? Are you going to make some money? We certainly don't want to put someone in a position where they're not going to be able to make money. And then third, is this business going to have a competitive impact in the community? So we look at those perceptions with all sectors. And when it comes to your particular sector, it's a little bit different. So we get to that flexibility there. So all of those loan decisions are made by the board of directors. Those boards of directors, they actually come from your community. They could be other fellow business owners. They are municipal leaders. They are teachers. They are retired volunteers. What's important to note there, though, is that those leaders are coming from your community, so they want to make the best decisions to grow your community. So in Newfoundland and Labrador, there are 15 CBDCs, and like I said, all governed by a collection of community leaders. When it comes to the fishery sector, it is a very big deal when it comes to the CBDCs. Last year, CBDCs dispersed more than 21 million to rural communities. In our world, in our province, everything outside of St. John's and Mount Pearl is considered rural. So that 21 million was spent on SMEs in those communities. Of the 21 million, almost 20% went to the fish harvesting sector. So as you can tell, with a $21 million loan portfolio, 20% of that going to the sector is extremely important. Some of the key successes of some of the CBDCs that we have is CBDC Burin Peninsula. So while on average 20% belongs to the province, this particular CBDC had 46% of its portfolio invested in the sector. So you can only imagine how strong of a sector and how reliant the communities are to make sure that that sector is strong in the Burin Peninsula region. When it comes to CBDC Avalon West, based out of Placentia, when they look at the portion of their portfolio that's in the sector, most of them are under the age of 34. And that is a statistic we are so proud to brag about, because we want to see more young people in this sector. We want to see this sector growing and more people involved in it. So that's one little statistic that we brag about a fair bit. When it comes to CBDC South Coast, over $10 million of their investments are in that sector. We've had so many success stories come out of that region, and they are so flexible in dealing with those clients that it's certainly one particular sector that the CBDC South Coast is going to do whatever they can to make sure that it is sustainable and that it is growing. So when it comes to the CBDCs, we offer a wide range of programs and services. You know, when it comes to a youth loan, a first-time entrepreneur, general business, social enterprise, really they're all, when it comes down to it, they're all just like marketing names. If you're going to come into a CBDC and try and access funding, we're going to look at that suite of programs there and try and tailor it so that it best suits you. If you are under the age of 34 and a first timer, you might be able to get a portion of that loan at a lower rate. If this is the ability to access the self-employment benefits program, there are those opportunities there. Really what it means is at the end of the day, we're going to look at your needs and kind of suit it so that it works within that program. There's a program called the Clean Technology Initiative. So if your enterprise is look at doing something so that you can improve the environmental impact of your business, then it's a sure fit. We'll put you in under that program. But what it's important to remember is that the CBDCs are going to look at that whole suite and make sure to design something so that it best suits you and your business. One of the programs that that's also listed is called the Consulting Advisory Services Program. What this program does is it's money that was set aside by the federal government for the CBDCs and Metro Business Opportunities to deliver in the community. What it is a business can identify a challenge or an opportunity and need to get access to expert counseling to make sure that they've got the right tools in the business or the right guidance, the right direction to move from point A to point B. So when it comes to the consulting advisory services, we've seen many enterprises coming from your sector to access that funds. So the pot of funds can help offset the costs of engaging with that consultant. So what you can do is you can use the program to access funding to purchase a new vessel. We've seen some applications come through to develop proposals, you know, to the Atlantic Fisheries Fund, to purchase a hook and line system for sustainable, efficient, and quality cod harvesting. Someone used the expertise of a consultant to help develop a proposal so that they could purchase a trawl monitoring system. So while that program can be used to do a number of things, it's important to note that what we want to make sure is if you need expertise and it's not currently at your fingertips, whether that be within your own suite of experience or your staff, we want to make sure that you can get access to someone to, again, help grow your business. When it comes to another program that we have, it's called the Business Valuation Program. I can safely say this is a newer program, and we haven't seen any of anybody from your sector avail of this program yet. What it is it can provide a true market valuation to a business owner or a potential buyer looking at that business and getting a true market valuation. So what it does is it'll give both the seller and the buyer a reasonable assurance in what would this business get if it went to market right now. We certainly, like I said, we haven't seen anybody go through this particular program in this sector yet, but we would certainly love it. It is a new program, so it's continually under evaluation. Any feedback would be appreciated. So over and above the financial programs that we can provide, CBDCs are really keen on providing business counseling and training. We see so many passionate entrepreneurs that know their business, know their sector, know their industry inside and out, but struggle with bookkeeping or struggle with proposal writing, struggle with hiring, struggle with firing. All of that type of training and counseling can come from a CBDC, and that's something that we provide to pretty much everybody that we come in contact with. It's making sure that we can protect our investments, but also make sure that we protect the businesses that are in the community, because we certainly want to see the communities remain strong and grow. So quite often we might get the question, well, why should I come to a CBDC? And that's a really good question. So when it comes to this particular sector, the money that we can provide may not cover all of your needs in all instances. The CBDCs are very familiar and very useful in being able to use our funds to leverage a financial request that you may have go into another institution. So, if the CBDC is going to be partnering with another organization to get you a larger loan, that we're familiar with that. When it comes to the CBDCs, they're going to give consideration to the species that's licensed. They're going to look at all of the assets that are part of the business and so on. When it comes to that loan piece, the CBDCs piece, security is important. We are going to have a registered interest. For example, one CBDC typically looks for 20% of the client equity. Might take enterprise and related assets, including the boats and equipment. Some will take assignment of cash. It's really important to recognize that we do have to do our due diligence in the money that we're lending, but we're going to do it as flexibly as we can so that maybe you need something else to offset that financial request from, say, for instance, the BDC or another commercial lender. Some of the loans that we've seen come through have been used to finance the purchase of an outboard motor and gear purchases to specific species license purchase, and then full inshore licenses, enterprises. So we've been a part of that entire spectrum when it comes to your sector. And some CBDCs are more heavily involved than others, but it's something that we make sure to work very closely with so that your needs are met as a business owner and that the community's needs are met, because we know you folks are such a key employment driver in the region. And that's for the initial outset of the entrepreneurs, as well as the secondary level of support that you're bringing to the community. When it comes to some of the more common questions that we may get from your particular sector is, what is the typical interest rate that you're going to offer? And that's an interesting question to ask, because today alone, the CBDCs are having that dialogue amongst themselves. What is your interest rate at this stage in time? And when I say at this stage in time, I mean in a pandemic environment where our sectors in the province are at risk. The province itself is running out of money, and it can be a dire situation. So even the CBDCs are asking themselves, when it comes to the interest rate, what's happening? That interest rate can be flexible in the sense that one part of the province may charge 8%, some may be as low as 5%. It can vary. What it is important to note is that it's flexibly financed. When it comes to the repayment method, it's very interesting. Typically, most businesses that we work with, you expect them, and we see them on a monthly basis making a payment or a contribution to their loan. This is the one sector that the CBDCs have designed to be as flexible as possible. We have many of you folks that are clients that we only see once a year, and that's quite fine. That works for your sector, and that works for the CBDCs, because we know there's such a good valued relationship there. The length of the amortization can be as quick as you want, or as long as you want, 10, 12, 15 years in some instances. Quite often what we see with this sector is though someone enjoying the idea of a longer amortization rate, but then being able to come in and quickly pay it down much quicker with no penalties. So the CBDCs want to make sure that we're designing a program, a loans or a financing program, so that it works with you. When it comes to this sector, we've seen loans as small as $10,000 to as high as $225,000, with the possibility of that going to $300,000. That's something that's being worked on right now. But you can see between $10,000 and $225,000, that is an extremely wide range of funding that can be provided. What's interesting to note when it comes to the CBDCs is that we like to think of it, it's a core assessment of your character. So it's character-based lending. We see many entrepreneurs that have nothing that can bring to the table, and that's okay. The CBDCs are there. We are designed to have the ability to take a risk on an entrepreneur, on an enterprise, on a sector, and on a community that may not traditionally have seen as much favoritism coming from another traditional financial institution. But that's what we're there for. We're there to fill that gap. When it comes to this sector, one of the cool things that we see, and if you looked at the tech sector, if we looked at the clean environment, if you looked at the retail, this characteristic doesn't stand out as much as it does in this particular sector, and that is we see the most families involved. So we see brothers and uncles and sisters and daughters coming into the table, coming in to talk about this particular business, this enterprise. And we value that because obviously a family is a strong component of a community, and we want to see that. When asking the CBDCs, sir, what are some other traits that you see with this particular sector? Unanimously, they came back and they said little bad debt. The CBDCs are designed to take those chances. So obviously we see bad debt allowance, but apparently not with this sector. We see that the entrepreneur and a CBDC work very close together if there is an issue to it being resolved, because there's always an opportunity for this sector. And we want to make sure that if an entrepreneur is in trouble or if a business is in trouble, we're going to help them. One of the coolest things that we see coming out of the fishery sector is the fact that we see the most referrals coming from you. When it comes to the CBDCs, when we ask, how did you hear about us? Quite often it is word of mouth. And that's, across the board for all sectors. But when you're speaking to the CBDCs and they're talking to their clients, if there's a new client coming in, there's an actual name saying, so-and-so down the road who owns this enterprise told me to come talk to you. And so we certainly value the fact that you recognize us as a good support to your sector, and we want to maintain that. When asked, for the CBDCs, just, give me some tidbits, describe some of the people that you're currently involved with in this sector, describe some of your clients. Quite often, you'll hear that fishers are proud, tough, independent, and creative. And then a lot of others will, give some colorful language as to why or why not they can't help as much as they want to. They want to see more supports provided to this sector. They want to see this sector. They want to see your enterprises grow. And so in the instance where quite often they may be lamenting about how regulations they feel are unfair to your sector and would like to see more resources. What that means to us is that if there's an opportunity for us to make a request or tweak or do something better to serve your sector, you should know that we are going to advocate for that as much as possible, certainly in whatever role that we're going to play. So welcome to September 2020, and the province is currently, just like the rest of the world, going through a pandemic. Just sent an email out to most of the membership today and asked the executive directors, can you describe what's going on with your clients? And certainly, much like every other sector, they're saying, generally it hasn't been a great year. The challenges in this sector are evolving. Markets are always evolving, and a lot of that is beyond control of the pandemic. It's beyond control of the individuals in the sector, but it has global trade impacts, and it has political and environment has implications, and we recognize that. But when it comes to the CBDCs, and you see some of the comments coming back, one executive director specifically saying, both ourselves as a lender and most of our clients are being cautious as we move forward into 2021, but we are still doing business in the sector, and our clients' applications reflect their caution as well as we mutually navigate into 2021 and beyond. And I know that's a mouthful, but what it gets down to be is that the CBDC and the clients that they're serving in this sector in that region are still hopeful and are still plugging away. And we certainly want to continue with that. So when it comes to operating an enterprise in this environment, if you are a client of a CBDC, make sure you are expressing any concerns that you have with them and ask for any future advice or guidance that they can help. If you are not a client of the CBDC, I'd certainly encourage you to reach out. The CBDCs are there to help make sure that you can grow as much as possible. And so we're going to do whatever we can and to be as flexible as we can to make sure that this sector realizes the potential that we know that it has as much as what you folks are reflecting in your day-to-day jobs. So I certainly want to take this time to say thank you for the opportunity to speak. I can't stress as much as I've already said that this particular sector is the backbone of our province in Newfoundland and Labrador, and the CBDCs recognize the importance that it is, and we want to do what we can to support you. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Roseanne, for that presentation. Our members certainly appreciate having such a great advocate in the CBDCs around this province. And we have gotten a couple questions in that we want to run past you. And I think the main one is, if I'm a new entrant or I'm somebody that is thinking of maybe expanding my enterprise or starting an enterprise, what should I bring to the meeting? Like, what do I need? What do I have to prepare?
So when the CBDC is going to sit down for that first meeting, they're just going to say, hi, how are you? I'm so excited to see interest in this sector. Beyond that, they're going to be looking for information about, licenses. They're going to be looking for information about the species. They're going to be asking you, do you know what's happening in this particular market? They're going to be talking about assets. They're going to be looking at you as an entrepreneur saying, you may have been involved in this sector before your whole life, but do you know how to manage it as a business? So they're going to go through a whole host of those things, and they're just going to make sure that you're quite comfortable going through this opportunity. But what I want to say is, if something doesn't pan out in that meeting, that doesn't mean anything gets shut down. What happens when the CBDCs are looking at these applications or these assessments, they're looking to see if there's a gap, but then they're going to help fill it. So it's not that we expect everybody to come through the doors with everything all filled out and a nice and neat business plan. Just that initial conversation saying, I'm interested, what can I do? That in itself is going to get the ball rolling really quickly.
Awesome. That's certainly a big help. And I mean, I think probably from talking to some enterprises that this was a really tough year because of COVID-19 and the delay in the fishery. So are there any measures that the CBDC knows about, or maybe that they're pursuing to kind of help those enterprises that had a really hard year because of COVID-19?
Certainly, the CBDCs were fortunate to get a nice chunk of change that they could actually inject into businesses and enterprises in their communities. Unfortunately, it did not go as far as we'd wanted to because the need was so great. But what that means is that we're looking to advocate to get more funds. But those that were fortunate enough to access the CBDC funds, there was relief there. So in the sense that if it's an existing client, CBDCs, I would be willing to bet, have reached out to each and every one of you with a phone call or with an email and said, how are you? Mm-hmm. What do you need? The first 3 months of the pandemic, the CBDCs automatically stopped cessation of interest and stopped principal repayments. And that was pretty much for blanket across the board. Mm-hmm. Many clients came back and said, no, I'm actually okay. I can manage it. They want to continue to pay down on their debt. But most of the CBDCs just went out right away and said, here it is. Here's a bit of relief for you folks. CBDCs are currently advocating to do that same thing because obviously the fall isn't going to bring that much relief that we're hoping for into the province. So we're looking to design a couple of more of those, immediate relief plans. So we're cutting down on the costs that enterprises have to be putting out on a monthly basis. For a longer term basis, we are looking at trying to see if we can't increase lending limits, if we can't get access to more funding, if we can't get access to more risk mitigation funds. And what that'll do, it'll just reduce the risk and reduce the negative relationship, or I shouldn't say, with money when it comes to having to pay back on a regular basis. So it goes back to that core characteristic of the CBDCs to try and be as flexible as possible. So we are continually looking to change that to better serve this particular sector.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And if folks want to get a hold of CBDCs, I'll share your website, and on that website has the numbers and contact info across the province.
Yes, it does.
Okay, well, thank you so much for coming on this new virtual webinar, and we hope to be talking to you soon.
Anytime. Thank you very much for letting me chat.